we live in a wonderful and mysterious world, and sometimes life will put a challenge in our way that can take us on a very unexpected journey. Now, I want to take you back 10 years to where my journey began. I was in 26th of January 2012. I was at the Parky Scarlets gym in West Wales, in Llanelli. I was doing an interval session on a bike in the gym, sat next to a good friend of mine, talking about a UFC fight from the week before, and literally had about 2 minutes to go on my bike, bang! I had a huge pain in my chest. I was super dizzy. I managed to get off my bike, walk across the gym, went into my physio's room, and I said, Pat, my physio, I think I'm having a heart attack. I literally was able to stumble down the hall. I put my back against the wall and just collapsed to the floor. I had this huge spasm in my left arm. I was sweating bullets. I was really struggling to breathe, and I was thinking to myself, Jesus, I'm 29 years old here. I can't be having a heart attack. Literally, the ambulance arrived. They put me on the bed, put me in the ambulance, put the ECGs all over my chest, and my worst nightmare was confirmed. I was having a heart attack. Fuck, I was so cross. I was kicking the ambulance. I couldn't believe this was actually happening to me. I got taken to the hospital, to the Morrison in Swansea, straight into theatre, where they put me on a slab, did an angiogram through my wrist, where they put a catheter up my arm. So there's a wire that goes across. You can feel it go across your chest and into your heart. Now, there's an X-ray machine above your chest. To the left is a screen. And on that screen, they inject the dye, and you can see your heart literally beating on the screen. Now, at this point, all I cared about was my career. I was looking at the doctor, and I was saying, buddy, how long have I got here? Yeah, a couple of months out, a couple of weeks. You know, I've got a big game in a few weeks, so am I going to be all right? But, you know, at that point, that's all I cared about. But slowly, I could see the nurses started to scramble. My pain intensified. The nurses said, and the doctor told me that I needed a bypass. I didn't even know what that was. So I said, yeah, fine, whatever, man. As long as I'm back in a couple of months, happy days. Literally, they ushered me into another anaesthetist room in a different theatre where my ex-wife and my ex-father-in-law were waiting. The minute I saw my wife, I literally broke into tears. I was scared for my life. I didn't know what the hell was happening. I gave her a big hug, told her I loved her, and told her to please tell the kids I love them. The anaesthetist put the mask on my face, injected me with general anesthetic, and told me to count back from 10, 9, 8, darkness. Now, before I get to how I ended up here, I'm going to give you a little bit of backdrop on my life. So, like Liz so kindly said, my name is Rhys Thomas, and I was born in Johannesburg. So for a Welsh international with a South African accent, then maybe it makes sense. But from a young age, I was super competitive, and sport really allowed me to express myself. You know, I enjoyed swimming, cricket, football, and eventually when I was to go to high school, rugby. Now, at the same time I was growing up, there was an incredible transformation happening in South Africa. In '94, Nelson Mandela became president, and in '95, his newly named Rainbow Nation would go on to lift the Rugby World Cup for the very first time. Now, I was a 13-year-old boy when this happened. I was in Johannesburg, where this World Cup took place, and it was, you know, I was a super impressionable age. Now, I hadn't touched a rugby ball at this point, but I knew there and then when I saw Madiba hand that trophy to Francois Pienaar, I wanted to be an international rugby player. Now, that next year, I went to a high school in Johannesburg called King Edward VII, which was a no-bullshit, boys-only boarding school where it was big on discipline. You know, if the prefects thought you were messing about, they would take, you know, corporal punishment was allowed. So it was a tough environment. But that environment, you know, taught me some fantastic values. Values such as respect, resilience, ambition. But more importantly, it gave me friendships. Friendships for life that I still have to this day, and that you'll see in a minute helped to save my life. Literally by the age of 17, I started to get the hang of rugby. I got my first representative age grade honours at 18. And at the same time, my dad was Welsh. I had the opportunity I had the offer to go to Wales, where I could pursue my career in Wales, in the academy in Newport. I was going to do a year's traveling anyway, so I thought, why the hell not? You know, go and see what the world has to offer. I may as well go past Wales, because that's where my dad was from. And that's what I did. In November of 2000, I turned up to Newport. Now, obviously, coming from Joburg to Newport is a big shock to the system. I had my first ever job. I got given a bicycle to get to and from work. I can vividly remember it raining for pretty much the first 3 months I was in Wales. It was muddy when we were training. I'd never seen mud in my life. You know, it was tough. But good thing is with the rugby team, it's an instant community. I had friendships, all things that are so valuable in our lives. But when I did feel homesick, I used to ring my mum and say, like, what the hell am I doing here? It's cold, it's grey, it's muddy. When I did feel like what I would do was escape, I'd go and get drunk with the boys and I'd just forget about it. After about 6 months of being in Wales, I ended up getting selected for my first age grade World Cup, where I went to Under-19 World Cup in South America, to Chile, where we placed 4th and South Africa finished 5th. So to me, complete justification for making the decision to leave home. 2 years later, I was lucky enough to be selected to play for Wales Under-21s, where we would win the age grade Six Nations with the Grand Slam. And later on that year, we'd place 5th in the World Cup. Now, at that World Cup, I probably played, at that point, the best rugby of my career. On the back end of that, signed my first contract. But like I said, I was a wild. My lifestyle was excessive. And when the club wanted to sign me, they knew I had huge potential and ability, but they had a big question mark around my lifestyle. Luckily for me, at about the same time, I'm a big believer that behind every great man is an even better woman. And my wife at this time was 10 years older than me with 2 children from a previous marriage. And she definitely gave me that stability I so badly needed as a young, wild child. So, those next few years were truly wonderful. For me to be able to go from a 13-year-old boy watching Madiba hand that trophy over, those next few years establishing myself as a starter for my club, my contract going up year upon year, having my first beautiful child, Morgan, in 2005, and then in 2006 getting my first call up to Wales. Now I went to Argentina on tour, where I came off the bench to get my first cap in Buenos Aires, which was an incredible experience. From the first time I picked the rugby ball up, it was 10 years from my dream, my goal of achieving that one thing I ever wanted, my single-minded determination to get to there. I did it in 10 years. And I was very proud, as my family were as well. But I wanted more. I was hungry. It gave me the taste of everything I wanted. And when I came home, those next couple of years, to play for my country was truly an honor. It genuinely was. The 7 caps that I accumulated for Wales, 5 of them I started. One of them, unfortunately, was on this pitch, where we got an absolute hide-in from England pre-2007 World Cup. It wasn't one of my proudest hours on the field. But after that, 5 of the matches I started, 2 were against the country of my birth, South Africa. Once at the Principality Stadium in Cardiff, and the other one in the Loftus Versfeld Stadium in Pretoria, which was about 40 minutes from where I was born. So to have all my friends, family, and school friends there was truly a special moment for me. But this game was probably the highlight of my career. To be able to play this game against Italy in the middle of 2008 Six Nations tournament. This is when Warren Gatland came to Wales, and he ushered in with him a whole new era, an era of professionalism and instant success. And he brought with him a new ethos that to beat the best, you had to be fitter than the rest, and that defense wins championships. And those next couple of months, instantly we won that Grand Slam. And this was match 3. After 3 games undefeated, we knew we had 2 games away from a Grand Slam. And if any of you have ever been to Wales, you would know that on match day, like rugby's the main sport, there's a buzz in Wales. When the rugby team's doing well, you can feel it. There's an energy. And on match day, it is an unbelievable experience to come on that bus as a player, see all the fans in red jerseys. They're getting pissed from the morning. And to come through Cardiff in the team bus, really was unbelievable. And then to go into the stadium, do that warm-up, feel the excitement, that buzz as the stadium fills. Go in the changing room pre-kickoff, take your shirt off, put your jersey on, feel that crest on your heart. Honestly, have that team talk, back down the tunnel. As you enter the pitch, flames blast in, the roof shut, 75,000 screaming, passionate Welsh men and women. What a buzz, right? There is not a feeling like it on this planet, I can promise you. Sing that anthem, whistle blows, bang, 80 minutes of war. The maddest thing is I can't remember a single thing about that game, or most of the games I played, in fact. I can't remember nothing from the get, just my breath and noise. Other than that, everything I mentioned. Now, there's one thing I can remember a hell of a lot about, and that was the night out afterwards. Now, like I said, I had I definitely had a tendency to be a bit wild. Like I said, I was a young lad from Joburg, and I like partying. It's probably my strength, if I'm honest. And it was something that, unfortunately, after a while, it started to be a huge distraction to my game. I struggled to turn those bright lights off, and that little bit of fame and attention badly inflated my ego. And those next few months and years, I can now reflect upon and look at and tell you that those 3 years that I experienced with Wales were incredible. Everything I ever dreamed of as a young lad. But then it got away from me. I lost my focus. The bright lights, they brought me in. And I started to take more risks, more unnecessary behaviors, excessive drinking, things that would stroke my ego. To be able to go out in Cardiff as a Welsh player post-match, you can imagine, right? Red carpet treatment, VIP. You got people offering you things, women throwing themselves at you. All of a sudden, here's this 18-year-old lad who's come from Wales 5 years earlier. I feel like I'm the king of Cardiff. It was a huge struggle for me to maintain my ego. Now, unfortunately, things got deteriorated. And, when things started to get really out of hand, the Welsh management had enough. I started to get locked up for doing all sorts of stupid shit in different countries and all sorts. I mean, the middle fodder is a beaut, right? That was taken in Italy. Now, eventually the management had enough. And in 2009, the Welsh management kicked me out. And that was the end of my Welsh career. It hurt my pride and ego massively. And eventually, instead of doubling down and thinking, right, I'm going to sort my shit out, get back in that Welsh squad, I did the exact opposite. I signed a new contract, moved from the Dragons, which is in Newport, down to the Scarlets, which is in West Wales, in Llanelli, on what was the biggest contract in Wales at the time for a prop. And those first 2 years were, terrible. I was injured for almost the entirety of the first 2 seasons I was there. And that was because off the field, my social life was completely off the rails. Excessive drinking, drug taking, risk taking of every description. And unfortunately, I got to the point where I thought, what the fuck am I doing? I'm 29 years old. I'm in my last year of contract. What am I doing? I got all the talent in the world. I got another 2 contracts under the belt. Why don't I just pull it all together? And I did. I stopped smoking, stopped drinking so much, stopped taking drugs. And in 2012, arguably probably had the best year of my career for my club. My career at this point was literally flying. I pre-contractually agreed to sign for Biarritz in France on double the wage that I was on with the Scarlets at the time, which was a significant amount of money. And just like that, one day on the 26th of January 2012, I was in Parky Scarlet's gym doing an interval session on a bike, and I ended up here. Now, what had happened? So, basically what had happened is that I had had a quadruple bypass. I'd had a massive heart attack, which I was very, very fortunate to survive. Had I not been as fit as I was, I probably would have. I lost over half the muscle in my heart from the size of the heart attack that I had. And when I woke up from this heart attack, my life had changed forever. Those next few days was just a complete fight for my life. I just drifted in and out of consciousness. And eventually when I went home, the drugs started to wear off, and it dawned upon me that not only now was I very ill, I literally had to stop between here and the toilet probably 3 or 4 times just to catch breath, but my career was over. And all I'd ever wanted from that 14-year-old boy was to be a rugby player, and it was gone like that. And that was something I started to struggle with massively in those months after. That loss of identity, that loss of purpose was something that was a huge challenge. And what was that physical battle became a huge mental battle. In 2013, then after this heart attack, my health deteriorated rapidly to the point where I needed a heart transplant, but was unable to because of the health that I was in. So they said, literally, you've got 2 choices. You can see out the rest of your days, which is, we roughly think about 12 months, or you can have a machine fitted into your heart, which can help you to run. So I said, yeah, fine, I don't want to die. I'm a 30-year-old man with young children, and a family, friends. Let's take the machine. And in 2014, I decided to have this machine fitted. Now, this operation came with a huge amount of consequence. I got offered a machine called the left ventricular assist device, which is a pump that's implanted into the left side of my heart, which then sucks the blood out of my heart, pumps it through a tube that then is connected to my aorta. There's a wire that leaves my abdomen, as you can see on the screen, And then in this man bag, any of you that thought I was rocking some sort of fashion statement here today, this is actually the bag that houses the batteries that keep me alive. So these batteries are just lithium batteries. They last 8 hours a time. After 8 hours, they beat for 15 minutes. And if I don't replace them after 15 minutes and I don't have the spares nearby or can plug in, that machine will stop, my heart will stop, and I will die. Again, I was very, very fortunate to survive this operation. I didn't wake up for 14 days post-op. And they basically said my chances of surviving were diminishing daily. And luckily for me, I did wake up after 14 days. But when I did wake up, I was now half man, half machine. You know, how do I contemplate what has just happened to me? You know, and I struggled terribly to deal with my life situation. You know, when I did come to and I did left hospital, my health did improve. You know, this machine gave me a new lease of life. But on top of that, I would ask the doctors, well, how long does this machine last? And they would say, well, how long is a piece of string? And that wasn't the kind of answer I wanted. I wanted like long-term security. Give me 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, give me 10 years, give me something. But that fear of the unknown for me started to eat me alive. Fear of death, that like not knowing what was around the corner. And this was something that started to affect my mental health terribly. My wife used to beg me, Rhys, please go and speak to a psychologist, anyone. And I was like, no, I'm fine, I'm good. And I was far from fine. I had these incessant insecurities and thoughts that were coming in my mind where I couldn't see a positive future. But nor, you know, I had looked at my past and all I could see was shame, regret, and remorse because I believed that I was to blame for me being in this situation. But I never expressed that to anyone. And this began to have a huge effect on me mentally. And unfortunately, the only way I knew how to deal with this state of mental health was to escape. And my choice of escape was something that I had used my whole life, and that was alcohol. Now, in 2016, being on this machine on the heart transplant waiting list, like I said, I didn't know what to do. So the best way to get out of here was to drink. And those 3 years between 2016 and 2019, I became an alcoholic. I was always a heavy drinker, but those 3 years in particular, I completely went off the rails. I would drink not like your brown paper bag type alky, more like your 7 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday drinker, maybe like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday drinker. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'd have huge anxiety. I'm sure it rings a few bells in this room, no doubt. Yeah? So that's how it was. But I wouldn't drink normally. I would drink to blackout. I would drink until I couldn't remember who I was, where I was. I would wake up in hospital beds. I would wake up in prison cells. I'd wake up with people finding me in nightclubs, and my batteries would be beeping, and they'd ring my wife and say, Rhys, they'd ring my wife, Paul, and say, Rhys's batteries are beeping, what do we do? And they said, oh, you have to take it out, you have to plug these batteries in this way and that way. And as you can imagine, unfortunately, my family and my wife had to watch their dad and husband deteriorate from an ex-international athlete into, quite frankly, a mess of a human being. Now, that is a struggle that I still have to cope with today with seeing the damage that occurred to my family. But I have to believe that the journey that I'm on now will rectify that in time. Now, amidst all this chaos, you know, luckily for me, and I say luckily, on the 1st of September 2019, I crashed my car drunk. Now, I was a habitual drink driver at this point, but I didn't know at that point that that was to be the change that I needed for my life. The next couple of months, I did stop drinking on that day, and I have been sober almost 3 years since the 1st of September 2019. Thank you very much. Thank you. But my wife knew that I still had huge problems, but I was in a huge amount of denial about how bad the problem actually was. Luckily for me, she persuaded three of my best friends from school, my dad and my half-brother, to all chip in and send me to a rehab facility in Cape Town. Now, I didn't want to go. I genuinely didn't think I was that bad. But the minute I walked through those doors, I knew I was in the right place. I learned more about myself in 28 days than I had in 37 years. It was genuinely the most painful, but the most profound, liberating, and transformational experiences of my life. To be surrounded by addicts of all descriptions, crystal meth, crack, heroin, cocaine, alcohol, opioids, gambling, sex, you name it. You know, doesn't matter what age, race, sex, or creed, we were all exactly the same. We were just human beings suffering from one trauma or another, and dealing with the best way we knew how. It truly was one of the best lessons I've ever learned. And in that environment, being completely vulnerable and being completely honest with, which is something I hadn't done for a very long time as a human being, in that group and one-to-one therapy, I was able to start to heal myself. I was able to start to understand who I was behind all those masks, behind the facade. Who was Rhys? And that's what it led me to question, who the fuck am I? You know? And all the fears and how they had manifested in my behaviors, my fear of failure, the fear of the unknown, the fear of death, the fear of rejection, all these types of fears that had presented themselves through my life, through my childhood traumas, although minimal compared to some's. Everyone has some sort of inner child work, which I've done, which has been of tremendous value to me. But at the end of that experience, what it had taught me was that to look within and to do the work on myself was where the value was. And my journey of self-discovery truly was the greatest journey of all. Those next few months after I left rehab were incredible. You know, what happened is I had some sort of awakening. I struggled to put it in words, but I knew that something had happened. And it realigned. Well, like I said, when I lost my career, I had no identity and purpose. And I completely lost my way. But when I found the Rhys, I refound my purpose. And I knew that it was to help others, to teach others that it doesn't matter how low you go, no matter how dark things are, there is a way out. And that's what I started to do. I started to work with a charity as soon as I came out with Tony Adams, with the Sporting Chance, working with 11 professional sports, teaching especially the Premier League and the EFL's academies about mental health and addiction. And from that experience, I then co-founded a mental health charity which now works in South Wales, where we deal with schools, colleges, universities, small and big businesses, and go in and educate, inform, and empower people to better understand their mental health and mental health in general. But not only that, I became a keynote speaker and began to spread my message this way. And, you know, what did I learn from this, you know, was that my mindset had changed. I couldn't see a way out. There was just pure darkness. My life had led me to that point. But my months after rehab weren't easy. You know, they weren't easy. I lost my wife of 16 years because of the unfortunate reality that my behaviors were unacceptable. And that was a big hit for me. On the back of that, I lost all my insurance money because I started to talk openly on podcasts and they canceled my insurance. So I ended up on universal credit. I had my house taken off me. All these things were humbling lessons, and they truly were, because I no longer saw them as good or bad. I just saw them as lessons. That victim mindset had gone, and now I had this growth mindset and saw everything as a lesson. And this journey the last few months has been unbelievable, the last few years. And one thing I will say is the amount of gratitude I have, the gratitude for being invited here by Lee today, the gratitude for all these incredible experiences that I've had privilege to have in my life, even the heart attacks, because without those, I wouldn't have been able to find the real Rhys, and it all was within. And I'd just like to thank you all for that, and I'll speak.